The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Don Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Jurassic Park 3, where we will continue to discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this movie as we continue to go through the Jurassic Park series of movies. Joining me today, as we have been going through this journey together across the island of Isla Sorna, joining me today on the panel are Thomas Inhuro.
Hi, Dom.
Hey, Thomas. And Father Michael Gossett. Hi, Father Michael.
Hi, it's good to be back.
Yes, it's been a while since we talked about Jurassic Park 2, but I'm glad that we're back finally to talk about this one. First, before we get started, I want to just a couple of little bits of business. Please remember to like The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on Facebook at our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can retweet it on Twitter at SQPN. Please leave us comments. We'd love to get your feedback. We would discuss it on a future episode. We want to hear from you what you think of both of the movies, but also of what we have to say about it. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app. My favorite's Overcast. I know a lot of people like Pocket Cast. Many people like Apple Podcast app. Whatever your favorite podcast app is, we're there. You can also listen on YouTube, where you can hit the bell to get notifications when we post a new episode. If you write an iTunes review, we would greatly appreciate that. That helps us get the word out more. And if you could share this podcast with your friends, we would greatly appreciate it to help us grow our audience. One other thing, if you like this show, you might like one of our other shows on the SQPN network. Today, I want to recommend Secrets of Star Trek. We're discussing the second season of Star Trek Discovery right now. And hey, it's better than the first season. It is. It's got a lot more of that old Star Trek feel. So if you give it a try, give it a listen. And when we're not talking about Star Trek Discovery, when it's not during the regular season, we talk about old Star Trek movies and TV shows, animated books, everything. So give it a try. Secrets of Star Trek is at sqpn.com/Star Trek. So, but let's talk about this movie. So Jurassic Park 3, the third film in this first trilogy. There's a second trilogy, which we'll talk about in future episodes. But so far, this is sort of the capper on this first set of films that we've been discussing. It came out in 2001. It was directed not by Steven Spielberg. He directed the first two. This one was directed by Joe Johnston, who we've seen direct a lot of different movies now. But he really came in and wanted to do this movie. Went to Spielberg, asked, if he could. Spielberg was busy. I think he was making AI or one of those other movies at this time. It's also the first of the movies that's not based directly on a Michael Crichton book. Of course, Jurassic Park and Lost World were. But this was a new story, but it includes a lot of scenes from those first two books. And just to, a quick recap, it's the return of Dr. Alan Grant, played by Sam Neill. We have a T-Rex has been replaced by the Spinosaurus as the big bad dinosaur, which we have a dramatic, violent example of, showing us really who's in charge now in the movie. We'll talk about that. A couple other things that came up. Because of the changes in paleontology, this series of movies is very interesting. How the dinosaurs have been portrayed has changed over time. And in this one, we get dinosaurs, like some of the velociraptors now have feathers and quills, because the paleontology they found out, hey, some of the velociraptors actually might have had feathers and quills. So, we'll talk about that. And then as sort of a background, the script itself for this movie, they had problems with it throughout pre-production, and right into production. They had a number of different stories that they went through. They went through all kinds of different screenwriters, different potential stories, and then scrapped everything 5 weeks before filming began, because the story was too complex. and they just decided to go with a simple rescue plot, and were even shooting scenes without having a script page in front of them sometimes. So the writing was being done as they were filming. So, and then to kind of cap it off, the critical response was so. Critics were, of course, critics are always, you know, they love the things I don't like, and they hate the things I do. So that doesn't bother me so much. But the box office was good. It made $368 million against its budget of $93 million. So that's pretty good for the time. So that's the background. Do you have any opening thoughts on this movie, guys? Thomas, you actually said you had something you wanted to say about this movie coming in. So why don't I know
I'm coming in with the unpopular opinion here. This is my favorite one. This is my favorite of the original trilogy. Obviously the first one is iconic in what it did, but this movie really, I think, brought Grant into his own. It brought the concepts of the dinosaurs into their own. It really embraced the paleontology in a way that I loved, that the first one kind of just skittered off of. And this one really took that concept of exploring the sociodynamics of a living animal as opposed to a dead animal to that next level. And I thought that was really great.
So that's interesting. So let's talk about Grant first, and why you felt like this was a Grant's better movie than Alan Grant's better movie than the first one. What was it about what different in this one for him?
This one, you got to see him be that child, that childlike wonder at the dinosaurs that you see in the first movie. You get to really see him bring that into the paleontology in this one, where he's not just like, oh my gosh, it's a dinosaur, but oh my gosh, it's a dinosaur. Now let me study them and see how they're doing, what they're doing. And it takes it to that next level. Okay.
All right. So I'm sure we'll bring out more of these points as we discuss the movie. Father Michael, what's your initial coming into this overall impression of the movie?
I watched it today for the first time in a long time, and I have to admit I didn't have great memories of it from the last time I saw it. But there are a lot of really good parts. I agree. I think Alan Grant, Sam Neill is one of the best parts of the movie, and there's a lot of just character stuff, even like the hints that maybe he has a little PTSD from his first go round with all these dinosaurs was a really interesting part of the story. I still think the first one looks better, feels more real, is scarier. There's lots of great stuff in this, but I can't say that it's my favorite of the original trilogy, Thomas.
So for me, the first one has that benefit of being the first one. It was the second one. It was darker, almost literally. It was almost filmed almost all at night. And without Grant, I think you're right that Alan Grant is his childlike wonder was replaced by Ian Malcolm's fear and doomsaying at this. The personal fear, but also fear at what this the implication meant for the world, for the environment, and all that sort of stuff. It got kind of heavy. Whereas this one, their lives were at stake, people were dying, but not in the numbers of the second one, certainly. Right. But also, just it felt a little lighter in many ways. I mean, there was more humor, certainly, in it. So I get that. It's hard for me to say.
It's interesting because this one also is one that this is where the formula for the modern blockbuster really kind of took hold, because you have these very dark moments interspersed with these humorous moments that fit. They fit the story. Right. They weren't just out of nowhere. And so then you move from that into all of what we're experiencing now with these Marvel movies, where it's a comedy with this dramatic backdrop.
Right.
And they work. And I really love the way that this movie kind of started that motion towards this way of doing blockbusters.
I mean, I get all the things that you're saying, but as I was thinking about this movie, it's at the end of it, I enjoyed it, but I felt like, I don't know, there was not enough there. You know what I mean? So they boom, 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 but it was I felt like maybe it went too quick. There wasn't a depth And some of the ground felt retreaded. I mean, and we'll get into it. We'll get into it. So let's talk about the movie itself then, as we go along, and some of these things will come up. So we're back to Isla Sorna, which I had to remember. Was that Site 1 or Site 2? But this is the second island. This is the island that they went to in Jurassic 2. The Jurassic Park itself, we won't see that again until Jurassic World, in the 2015 movie. So we're back at Site 2, and here you have the idiot guy parasailing next to the island with the kid, too close to an island so they can get a dinosaur thrill. And then they have this moment where, like, they're around the island, something attacks the boat, and we never find out what it is. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, whatever's swimming there could swim away from the island.
Right. Exactly.
So it's something, it's something they kind of throw out there. They never kind of follow up on, but it's like, is it an aquatic creature or just one of the land creatures going for a swim? We never find out.
The kid in the movie, he maybe I didn't think about it till now, but he says, "Oh, the big ones live near the water." He kind of says that, so maybe the giant Spinosaurus got him and was just very quiet and quick about it.
Right,
but it's not explained.
And smart enough to use the fog to go hunting in there. So because suddenly there's this fog bank, just out of nowhere,
out of nowhere,
in the middle of the day.
Plot convenience.
Yeah. So and then we go to Grant at Ellie's house now, and it's sort of this surprise that Grant and Ellie aren't together, because in the first movie they were a couple, and now Ellie is married to someone else. She has kids, and it's a little shocking when you first see this. You're like, wait, no, they're supposed to be together. They're the happy couple. But they're certainly, they appear to be friends still. I mean, some time has passed, I guess. But it's this interesting dynamic between them that you kind of get the sense that she wanted to settle down, and Grant couldn't. He was not good around kids. Remember that from the first movie. And we have this funny moment where he's trying to tell the toddler that no, those are herbivores. those wouldn't attack each other. So, but there's this great moment in that scene where her editor, I think, or somebody comes out to Ellie and says, "Oh, your editor, the publisher's on the phone," and she says, "Tell her I won't lose the Jack Horner quote from the book," which is a funny inside joke because Jack Horner is the paleontologist consultant on the movie. Yeah. So they're referencing him.
Good, yeah.
So, so Grant, so we have this nice scene with Ellie, and we find out that her husband works for the State Department. And you put a pin in that because that's Chekhov's job opportunity. Will be coming back up later at the end of the movie. That's an important point. But then he goes to this speech at college or something, and it's talking about the dinosaurs and the raptors, that they could talk to each other. They're smarter than dolphins or whales or primates. And then he gets these questions. First it's question time, and then everybody raises their hand, and he says, "Any questions not related to Jurassic Park or the incident in San Diego, which I did not witness?" And I'm thinking to myself, what would it be like to be a paleontologist in a world that has dinosaurs again? Mm-hmm. And how would it change the study of dinosaurs? And in fact, he kind of addresses this in the question, doesn't he? So what do you think? If this were to happen, what do you think would be the result for paleontologists? Would they be, who cares about bones in the ground? We're only caring about the animals that are walking around. What do you think?
I think that's accurate. That kind of the spectacle of real Jurassic Park, that's what people want to see. But I think the distinction he makes is just really interesting. Like, that's not real. The thing that they've studied and built this science on is gone. It's in the past. It's like you said, it's in the rock. And what they have on those islands are creations. It's right. Like humanity's injected themselves into it. in a very real way. The other thing that struck me through that whole part was like, if I had been hunted by dinosaurs, I don't know how interested I would be in studying them anymore. That he's still in love with this, that he's still fascinated with the raptor after everything he went through. That really surprised me watching it this time.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's interesting looking at him too as as having that post traumatic stress and seeing this situation and knowing how many times he's been asked about about the park and about being on the park, and that's not what he wants to talk about. He wants to talk about real dinosaurs. Like, he wants to talk about the things that actually existed and what they were like when they lived.
Right.
And then you mentioned the point that that paleontology changes between the first movie and this movie, and it's funny because, I mean, if we genetically brought these creatures back to life, that wouldn't have happened. They would have been whatever they were in the first movie, and there wouldn't have been a genetic change over to this movie. But it's fun to kind of see our cultural bias of looking at this movie and saying, oh, well, things have changed now, so we're actually going to update the dinosaurs to fit that new model that we have.
Right. It's interesting. Yeah, that the paleontology actually imposed itself from the real world into that question in the movie that changes the dinosaurs, as they act. It's fascinating to me, this idea that he's the creatures that are walking around on this island are not in the original environment. They're not interacting the way the original dinosaurs would have interacted with each other. They probably are, animals living together that were separated by millions of years of evolution. Never mind the fact that they're 90% of their DNA is this frog DNA that they talk about, which, who knows what effect that would have on them long term. And so it's an interesting point he's making, which is, when we get into fiddling around with nature and start molding it to our own entertainment, what are we losing when it comes to understanding the way it was? And maybe there's a lesson in that for humanity, and what we, when we start fiddling around with our own DNA through these various gene editing techniques they're doing, are we going to, lose a sense of who we are? So a little philosophical there, but it's kind of interesting.
It's interesting too that, like, these movies have had such effect on just kind of like popular ideas of dinosaurs, that they invented the velociraptor for the first one, I think we mentioned, and then found a dinosaur that kind of looked like that. That probably for a lot of people, I know my age, this was such a huge pull into all dinosaurs are amazing. But to see how it changes over these three movies, because it's not just kind of like reporting on paleontology in the world. It really is bringing a focus to it in a way that didn't exist before.
It's sort of like the way that Indiana Jones, kind of brought a focus on archaeology in a way that had never been before, and influenced a generation of kids. Or Top Gun, I was in high school when Top Gun came out, and you can imagine the effect that had on a lot of kids. So yeah, it's that how there's a responsibility in some ways for the filmmakers as they kind of popularize some of these things, to also not to mess them up too much as they present them. Right. So Grant, actually, we end that scene where he's given a lecture with Grant saying, "No force on earth or heaven will get me on that island," which, as we know, is even when we watched it the first time, we knew that was a famous last words, of course. And then we switch over to these mercenary types who are, blowing up an airplane with their high powered weapons, which we know are going to be ineffective because they always are. We saw that in the second movie, that the high powered weapons are ineffective. And this fellow, the fixer, the guy who's kind of in charge of the mercenary, tells Kirby on the phone, he says, "It's going to be a walk in the park." And I'm like, yeah, in Jurassic Park, which
every
is
single time.
Famous last words. Yes. So we move to the dig in Montana, where we're like, in some ways, this movie kind of walks a lot of the same path that the first movie did. There's some of the same beats in it. So we have this Grant is at the dig in Montana where a rich guy shows up and wants to fund his dig in exchange for him coming to his island of dinosaurs. Now, there's some twists in there, obviously. They twist our expectations a bit as we move along, but it's kind of interesting how we've got the similar beats to the story here. I did find it fun to see a 3D printer from the year 2000.
Yes, that was awesome. That was so great. And it's like, it's one of those things that you would actually like really make sense to use a 3D printer for. So they had the tech right. The concept of the tech and where to use the tech and how it could be applied was definitely a solid fit.
I was a little surprised that there were like 3D printers like that available at that time, as that long ago. But it was also fun to see Mac OS was it 8 or 9 being on a Mac on an old Mac there. That was nice to see again. A little throwback for me. So they he meets up with Kirby and his wife. I'm trying to remember everybody's names. There's a lot of different character names. So Amanda and Paul Kirby, they present themselves as these adventurers who want to go on this great adventure, and they just want to fly over the island. We're just going to fly over the island. No big deal. We're not going to land. No, we're just flying over the island. And they convince Grant to go with the offer of a big check. And of course, they end up landing on the island. And almost immediately after they land, they start doing stupid things.
Yep, yelling. Oh my gosh. Why are you yelling?
And it's amazing how quickly the two mercenaries get killed. Like the Cooper is the first one to die. I mean, he's like that. It's like he's on that island for like 10 minutes and he's dead. Like the Spinosaurus gets him, and then they do the plane crashes and the Spinosaurus comes, and the Spinosaurus, like, I kept trying to think of like why was it so motivated? You know what I mean? Why was it so like adamant about I'm hunting these people and I need to kill them all? There was that was a little bit of a hard one for me. I was like, okay,
yeah. Well, and then when it kills them, what is it doing with them? Because they find Billy's body still attached to the to the paraglider, so it's like it wasn't eating them.
Well, so, well, that's the other thing is I don't know how that guy died because something killed him. I have questions about that.
Before we forget it, I don't want us to not mention Alan's dream of a raptor talking to him on the plane, because that's probably my favorite movement of the movie.
that was pretty funny. Alan,
very surprising.
So
you would not have seen that in Jurassic Park 1.
No,
saying.
Yes, that's true. That's not Spielberg would not have done that. Well, so they escape from the plane. They escape from the Spinosaurus. Then they run into the T-Rex, which I thought was great.
Great
moment.
And
then we have this moment I mentioned earlier where the two dinosaurs fight, and the Spinosaurus wins. This the symbolic moment of you thought the T-Rex was bad. This guy's worse. You know, that's sort of like the T-Rex was the king of the dinosaurs back in Jurassic 1 and then in 2, but the Spinosaurus, we're being served notice. This guy's worse. And this is going to become, I think, the trend of the next two movies, where we have to find each movie has to up the ante. We have to have a scarier dinosaur. That's now the trend.
See, this is what ties all the great movies together in the series, because they didn't do that in Jurassic 2. They did it in 1 with the Velociraptors and the T-Rex at the end. And then they did it in this one with the Spinosaurus and the T-Rex. And so now they just got to keep upping that level of, like, which is the next baddie that we're going to have come out.
Right. Well, yeah, the Indominus Rex was in Jurassic World, and there's still a T-Rex because I don't care. In every Jurassic Park movie, there has to be two different dinosaurs have to show up in every one: Velociraptors and T-Rex. That's just, if you don't have those dinosaurs, whatever other dinosaurs you have, it just doesn't feel the same. But that's just me. That's me. But I have to be honest. I have not seen the second Jurassic World movie yet. I've been kind of waiting on that until we get to it in our sequence here. But I have a feeling we get one of them, but not the T-Rex. But I don't want to spoiler on that, so I'll just leave it like that.
Okay. We'll not fill you in.
So they have this battle, and then we have a funny moment where Kirby admits that he mistook Grant for Ian Malcolm when he kidnapped him. Like he thought he was Ian Malcolm who had been to Isla Sorna before, and he's like, no, I've never been to this island. That was the other island. So there's that a little bit of that comedic moment. We find out that the Kirbys were lying to Grant all along, that they're not world adventurers, like surprise, surprise, and that what their intention was to land all along because their son Eric was lost on the island 8 weeks ago. Now, I'm a parent, and I would be out of my mind too. And probably would have gone to any length to get there. But wow, 8 weeks on the island of the dinosaurs. It almost stretches it to the point of believability and credibility for me. That element
that he's alive.
That he's alive.
Yeah.
I mean, there's good, but I'm not even sure Grant would survive for 8 weeks on this island by himself.
He did read both of Grant's books, so that must have had some powerful tips for him.
Yes, and Ian's book, which he did not like as much, which was a nice, funny little moment there.
And it's hard to imagine a kid his age surviving anywhere for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Period. Just like here you go, survive on your own for 8 weeks. Nah, I'm not seeing it. So
right, exactly. Now they mentioned that the Spinosaurus wasn't on the Spinosaurus wasn't on InGen's list of dinosaurs they were making. So that leads to the question of what else were they making up there on that island? And we never get a direct answer to the other surprise pieces, but we kind of come back to that again in Jurassic World. Right. This idea of them breeding other things that weren't on the approved list, so to speak. So let's come back to this point about the guy, Amanda's boyfriend, Ben. We watched the video on the video camera that has been recharged using a flashlight. Thank you very much. That Udesky is a pretty handy guy. Let me tell you, he can run a video camera off of a flashlight battery, and we see like the sequence of events right to the end where they kind of crash in the trees, and then Ben releases Eric and he falls to the ground, and then the camera stops. So between that moment of when Eric falls to the ground and when Ben dies, still in the harness, had to have been fairly quick. Otherwise, Ben would have just dropped out of the harness, right? Like, so what happened that killed Ben, left him in that harness, and allowed Eric to get away? That's
a good point.
I was thinking they're going like maybe the little dinosaurs or something, the Compasauruses. I don't know. So, but it gave us.
We're just going to blame everything on the Spinosaurus, and it has no actual reason to do anything it does. It's just like, it's just a killing machine. That's it.
Right. It's just ticked, and it wants to kill everything. Yes. So let's go with that. And so we have that, and of course the moment was there so that Amanda could have that scream fest of the being tied to the caught up in the strings of the parasail, and is tied to the dead body of her boyfriend, which is
kind of Indiana Jonesy.
Yes,
when I watched it, yeah.
Yes, the Well of Souls, that whole bit where Marion.
Yeah, see, and that's where I really like. I think this is the point at which I really fell in love with the movie, because it went way off of that path that 2 was going down. 2 was going down this very serious, like let's talk about the world and let's do all this stuff. And right. it was between the Spinosaur fighting the T-Rex, which totally reminded me of King Kong. It was like a moment straight out of a King Kong movie, yes. Right? And then moving over to this where she does that deadly scream, and I'm like, I'm in Indiana Jones land. This is awesome. This is so great.
Right. Well, there might be some sort of message in here somewhere, but it's not going to be over the top. It's not going to be some deep philosophical question. I mean, the most we get is when Grant kind of gets mad at Billy for taking the eggs, but that's about right. as deep as we get into any kind of agenda of this. This is just a fun escape, get away from the bad dinosaurs, survive to the
there you go
to the and find Eric.
It's kind of nice that it's a smaller story too. You're really focused on just these few people, 4 or 5 at the most usually.
Right. Yeah, unlike say 2, which was all of those people, and Jurassic World, which was an entire theme park of people, many of them getting gobbled up. So I can't wait to talk about that movie with you guys. That's such a fun. Those scenes are just insane. Anyway, this movie, they find out that the dinosaurs are laying eggs. They don't spend a lot of time talking about this because, of course, they knew that they were laying eggs in Jurassic Park 1. They found, life finds a way, etc., that sort of thing. But they walk into a nest of velociraptor eggs. It's like out of the frying pan into the fire. And that's when Billy, goes full idiot and takes some of the eggs. And then Grant ends up carrying the bag. He's literally left holding the bag. So the velociraptors are chasing them, and they just assume it's because they're velociraptors. That's what they do. They chase you. But no, they have an agenda. So they get to the embryo lab where the dinosaurs were being bred, and they get inside. One of my favorite scenes is, and it sort of show. Well, let me explain. The scene is when they go to the vending machines, and Kirby is like looking for change for the vending machine, which there's no electricity, so I'm not sure that's going to work anyway. But he's still looking for change, and then Billy just comes up and kicks through the glass because, of course, nobody's stocking these machines. These machines don't belong to anybody anymore. They belong to the dinosaurs. Right. And it shows like how civilization dies hard. He's a civilized small business owner from Enid, Oklahoma. He's just a regular guy, and he just would never think to steal from a vending machine.
It's so much the kind of character William H. Macy a lot of times ends up in, just like this kind of, he doesn't belong here. He's sort of figuring it out.
Like Fargo, Mystery Men, even, like just a lot of those roles that he's played where he's just like the average Joe fish out of water sort of thing, over his head. And that he does that so well. They go into the lab. Amanda is looking at all the little dead embryos in the thing, and then she sees the velociraptor head, and I'm thinking, that velociraptor, what a jerk. I mean, he's just playing a trick on her. Practical joke. Boo is essentially what it does, and it freaks her out. I mean, I thought that was. I remember the first time I saw that, and I jumped out of my skin the first time because I'm like, what? It's just when that eye twitches. That was the key. The eye focuses on her.
It was a great jump scare. That one was a really good one.
Oh, and it showed.
And it's coming too. That's the thing, is like you're watching it and you're like, oh man, that's too. They wouldn't spend that much time. That's got to be. And they just hold it and hold it and hold it, and then finally you're like, oh gosh, there it is.
It takes a little courage on the director's part to hold that shot as long as he did, knowing that we know what it is, and just that. Get that squirm up to its max, and then go.
How close she gets to it. She really leans in, and
yes,
like, oh, that's really interesting.
Yes,
and then and the idea also that it's springing a trap on her, it's really bringing out this idea of the intelligence, and it chases them into the cages, and it sees that it can get up and over the top at them. I mean, that was like freaky, that moment, and then chases them out, and they're into the forest, and they get up in the trees, except Udesky doesn't, and they wound him and leave him as a trap. I mean, that is just evil. I mean, so like scarily intelligent evil that they would do that. That is such an effective beat to this story. I just felt like that was so well done. And it's interesting that effectively from this point, where Grant gets surrounded by the velociraptors and Eric saves him, to the end of the movie, that's it for velociraptors. We don't see them again. Yeah. What do you think? I mean, is that a loss for the movie? Should we have seen these more? What do you think of that decision to kind of now just kind of drop them in favor of the Spinosaurus, and then we're going to get the Pteranodons at some point? What do you think about that decision?
I think it's successful in that you're so occupied with everything else that's trying to kill them that you forget about, like, oh, this whole pack of really smart predators is not just hunting them, they have the eggs and
Right.
really is hunting them. And I think it works in that sense that when they jump out at the end, it is kind of a surprise because those characters think they're home free. They've made it.
Right.
And I think it is a good way to kind of, it's not, the whole movie isn't a chase, because if you're just being chased by velociraptors the whole time, you're probably not going to survive too long.
Right. Yeah. They knew they were going to the beach, and so they went and laid in wait for them at the beach, because they knew that
was the really impressive part about it, is like taking that level of intelligence, of the human intelligence. Like you have several, you have two at least, and the kid, intelligent humans who are making really good decisions based on all of their knowledge that they have of everything that they can come up with, and then you've got these dinosaurs that just know the lay of the land. Mm-hmm. And they know how their prey is going to act. They know they've got it, and it's that pitting those two against each other. They know that at this point the velociraptors are like, we don't need to go where they're about to go,
right?
But we can get ahead of them,
right? We know where they're going, and we can cut them off and save ourselves all that effort of chasing them everywhere. That's right, especially given that the Spinosaurus is out there, that they probably have to be careful of themselves.
Exactly.
So Eric rescues Grant with the smoke bombs, and they get into the I'm going to guess it's a water truck and not a fuel truck.
Yeah.
A fuel truck would not.
He says a water truck. Yeah.
Yeah, because that would be a very bad place to live for 8 weeks, is inside there with all the fumes. So so here's another way where the movie kind of reflects the first movie. Put it that way. I don't just want to say it copies, but it reflects it, which is you got another kid who recognizes Alan Grant, has read his books, and liked the first one better. And I like the fact that he says that I like the first one better because you still loved dinosaurs, which was interesting. And of course, Grant says, "Well, that's before they tried to eat me." Mm-hmm. And then he also thought he read Malcolm's book, but found it too preachy. So now Grant likes him more. And I felt like a little bit that might have been a bit of the director winking at the audience, like, yeah, I get it. Jurassic 2 was a little too preachy. We're not doing that this time. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I feel Eric there. Eric is definitely speaking my language at that point in the movie.
And I mean, he's undoubtedly, as portrayed in this, he's a resourceful kid, who I like that moment where he's like, it's been 8 weeks, and he's like, has it only been 8 weeks? And they kind of leave that there. They don't have to go into it. He doesn't get all emotional about it, but he's kind of surprised that it's only been 8 weeks. You think about it, a day on that island would seem like 8 weeks. How long it must have felt for him to be there. So kind of an interesting, and I think that was a well done moment in this movie. And then we have Paul and Amanda, his parents. We get this reconnecting over this shared horrific experience that they're having. They're rekindling their romance, which was apparently had been snuffed out in the boredom, suburban boredom of Enid, Oklahoma, or something. And so now they've renewed their romances all this time as we go along. So right now, Grant and Eric are separated at this point in the movie, separated from Paul and Amanda, and Billy. Those are our two groups. Mm-hmm. And they're moving through the forest. I like that we talked about that. Kirby says, "Oh, we should move to the to the edge of the island because all the big predators will be in the middle, right, Billy?" And Billy's like, "Oh, yeah." And then we switch to Grant and Eric saying, "Oh, yeah, we have to go to the edge of the island, but yeah, we have to be really careful because that's where all the big predators are." Yeah, so, like, yeah, it's not going to get better going to the beach. So as they're going through the forest, Eric hears his dad's satellite phone and comes running. Now, if you're paying attention to the movie, you realize that it was Nash who had the satellite phone last. In fact, they made a point of showing Nash tucking it into his vest. And the last we saw of Nash is that he was second course on the menu for the Spinosaur. So if you're paying attention, you know what's about to happen. They see each other at the big fence, and they're like, "Oh, I heard your phone. I don't have my phone." And then you turn around. I love that scene where you turn around and you see the Spinosaurus staring at them, and you're hearing the phone ringing from inside it.
Yeah.
Which
and
is
it's one
like
of those iconic rings too. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like it's that great moment where you've got all the elements together of early 2000s right there in this dinosaur staring
Absolutely.
at them.
And it's so chirpy and like pleasant and happy while you're staring like literally death with teeth right there in front of you. Yeah, that was a good moment. That was a lot of fun. Eventually they get to the aviary, and this is one of those scenes that they pull out of the books, because Thomas, you read the book, right?
Yes.
Father Michael, did you read the book?
I read the first one.
Okay, so apparently this scene was inspired by a scene from the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think
this is one that it was pretty iconic in the book too, where you were kind of disappointed that it never made it into the movies because it's so impressive, like thinking of this gigantic dome structure that has the flying dinosaurs contained inside of it.
Right. And was it similar? Did it like a similar circumstances, or was it just that it was a dome structure with the flying dinosaurs?
No, it was kind of just the concept of the dome structure with the flying dinosaurs and them ending up in there and having to work their way around it. They actually went into, I think it's Jurassic World that they did the scene where they had a similar kind of thing where the helicopter comes into it. And that's I don't know. I mean, both of them get that impressive-ness of like the flying creatures. Like, how could they keep them from like escaping the island? And so we're just going to build this gigantic thing to put them in.
Okay. And so we get this scene. So this is at the beginning of this scene is where Grant confronts Billy. He realizes he took the eggs, and he basically says, you're no better than the people who built this island by doing this. And you see some regret in Billy's face, like he saw payday there,
right?
And Grant's like, no, you have to, there's an ethical path, and you strayed from the ethical path, and it's an interesting point that he's kind of making there, which is, and again, like I said before, they don't spend a lot of time pushing this too much, but there's the right way of doing things, and Grant represents that, and the wrong way of doing things, which is all of the Jurassic Park stuff and anything having to do with InGen, and so I like the fact that these movies really propose this idea of the right way of doing. Well, in this case, of science, that you don't take shortcuts, and Billy's trying to take a shortcut.
I think it's interesting too that there's sort of a father-son relationship maybe going, that Grant, who has all this history of not getting along with kids, he definitely treats Billy kind of as like an adult son, and they have a close relationship, and just the disappointment he has, you can tell Billy feels it, and it's strong in the movie, especially when you think that's the last thing that he said to him before this, the horrible next scene that we're going to talk about.
Right.
I wish they would have spent like half a beat more on this and given Billy an out to say, but what could we do if we could actually study them up close, or something more than just seeing dollar signs when he took the eggs. Because that to me, like, it kind of made that character fall a little bit, where there should have been something more scientific about what he was doing. Right, grabbing those eggs along the way.
And
I think it calls back well to the beginning. I think Grant says something that, like, basically we're a dying breed. They see the end of their science sort of on the horizon in some way. People just aren't interested, and I could see that bringing out in Billy. I got to do something. We need funding.
Right. Yeah, he does say he was doing it for the funding. But you're right. Like, even if he said, like, if I'm doing it for the science, I want to study these creatures. I mean, Grant could still reply, well, like he did before. Well, these aren't the creatures we're studying, but it could still have been about the science. So it could have saved Billy a little bit there. Billy does say he wouldn't have taken the eggs if he'd known Grant would end up with them in the bag. And I'm thinking, it's not like the Raptors would have made a distinction between you guys. When they caught up to you, they'd still want to eat both of you. You know, I mean, that would be what would happen. And then Billy says something else too, which is, you have to know that if it was a stupid decision, it was made with the best of intentions. And I like that they have Grant give the correct response here, which is some of the most horrific events in human history have been caused by people with the best intentions. And it's so good. I mean, it's just, that is a clear moral compass that you don't often get in movies today that you're getting here. And I did appreciate that.
I think that's a good theme throughout all these movies, is that as amazing as this is, all these creations, it's not good in the end. It's not something we should be tremendously happy about. Right,
exactly. I mean, because what ends up happening is people end up dying, and including in San Diego, as we talked about. They make their way through the aviary. They encounter the Trinodon. I really like that moment where Eric walks through the fog again, and that's where the Pteranodon is standing there on the walkway in front of him. I just thought it was a great another jump moment.
To me, those are the scariest dinosaurs in this movie, especially that scene. They're just so weird looking and so different from everything we've seen before.
So alien.
Truly alien. Yeah, exactly. So alien.
And it takes Eric to its nest to feed to its young, which it apparently has done before because he finds a skull there at the nest. And Billy, thankfully Chekhov's parasail was available from earlier in the movie. Billy uses the parasail to save Eric, but himself appears to die, appears to be lost in the effort, thus redeeming himself in for his prior error. They get to the boat, but they make it clear that they left the gate to the aviary open, which is interesting. They do that not to let the Pteranodon out to attack them again, but so that they're available at the end of the movie to fly away.
Right.
And when we get to that point, I'm curious what you think. What you think the director's trying to say with that? But I mean, Grant has a few lines there, but I don't know if there's more to say about that. So they get to this boat on the river that they've been trying to make their way to, and they start going down the river. And there's an interesting conversation with Grant and Eric, where Grant says there are two types of boys: those who want to be astronomers and those who want to be astronauts. The astronomer, or in this case the paleontologist, gets to study these amazing things from a place of complete safety, but then you never get into space, which is how is what Eric says. And Grant says, exactly. It's the difference between imagining and seeing, to be able to touch them, and that's all Billy wanted. And it's an interesting idea. It's an interesting distinction that the fields are related. They're both space related, astronomy and astronautics. But they're done completely differently, and there are safe paths through life, and then there are paths through life that are riskier, but maybe the rewards are greater. And I think that's sort of another bit of the lesson, a little bit of the message here. What do you think?
Yeah, but again, it's really subtle, and it's left open to the viewer to pick how they want to take that. I mean, we're talking about the absolute stupidity of going to these islands. And so, yeah, it might be great that you could be one of those people that wants to study dinosaurs up close and be, a behavioral analyzer for dinosaur lives. But that doesn't seem to work out very well.
It almost never does.
You can't quite see which side Grant comes down on. Even with all his experiences, he's still amazed by these dinosaurs in real life. Mm-hmm. He doesn't automatically flee. He enjoys seeing them. I think even from the plane, he says, "I had forgotten" or something like that. Just what an amazing sight it is. And so even for somebody that is on the astronomer side that likes to look at these bones in the ground, he can't help but want to touch them. He can't help but want to experience them.
Right. Even astronomers. Yeah, even astronomers who want to play it safe from the telescope might dream a little bit about what would it be like to be in space. So there's a little bit of that there. Yeah. So while they're on the boat in the rain at night, because that's when dinosaurs attack, they get this. Well, first they get the sat phone back by digging around in. If you got a Jurassic Park movie, there's got to be a giant pile of dinosaur poo that they have to dig through. That just is required.
And the dinosaur doesn't eat them because apparently they smell bad from that experience. It's a very strange scene.
I couldn't tell whether it was because it realized that's a Spinosaur pile of poo, or if it was just that they stunk so bad. It might have been one of the I don't know which one it was, but they were doing something there. And meanwhile, the Spinosaur shows up. It's a little bit of a Jaws homage there as it comes through the water with the fin above the water, which is a nice little tribute by Joe Johnston for Spielberg. Grant calls Ellie on the sat phone, but gets the little boy, Charlie, the toddler, who gets distracted by Barney on the TV, which was just of course, a funny reference. And meanwhile, the Spinosaur shows up, and they're all screaming their heads off. And when Ellie finally gets the phone, he doesn't actually get to tell her where they are, but I think she figures it. Like she figures it out from the screaming and the yelling and the whatnot. So with the implication being that, fortunately, her husband, we learned earlier, works for the State Department, so he will be able to call in the Marines, literally.
Right, but how did they know it was Sorna and not Nublar? Like, that's, right. What if they had gone to the wrong island?
Well, just hoping Alan left a note somewhere.
Maybe they went to both.
Tell someone.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. They went to both.
Yeah. Although, I mean, from the Jurassic 2, from the second movie, I mean, the implication was that the animals on Nublar died from the deficiency, the lycophane, lysophane, whatever that was, deficiency, but that the animals on the second island did not have the same deficiency, and that's why they survived. I think was the implication, but I'm not sure.
At least from Jurassic World, I think it's supposed to be the same T-Rex, right? In the next movie.
Still alive? That's an interesting question. Yeah. That's an interesting question. Yeah. Well, and then we have this. In this fight, they defeat the Spinosaur with the flare gun lighting the flames on the water, and this is the last we'll see of the Spinosaur. He's had enough at this point with the fire. We think Paul Kirby is dead, but luckily he told us earlier that he took up swimming. And that's what saves his life. He's able to swim under the fire to the shore, and where he's reunited with his family. So that so I like the way they keep tying these loose ends back in. That nothing is wasted. Everything is there for a reason.
Except for why this dinosaur is hunting these people. Like, there's got to be bigger stuff for him to eat on the island. Right. What is he doing?
This dinosaur just hates people.
Or like a change in diet. Maybe he's eating all the.
That was tasty. It's like give me some more of those.
It's like the Wrath of Khan dinosaur. I will chase them round the moons of perdition. So like we mentioned, the raptors catch up to them just as they get to the coast. They give them back the eggs, and then Grant uses the resonating chamber again. No loose ends, to trick them into hearing a call for help from another velociraptor, which they then go to investigate. But it's interesting how there's this the velociraptors, they don't attack them here. They surround them. They know they've got their eggs. They take their eggs and go. That intelligent thing going on.
That raptor smelling Amanda and kind of just getting right up in her face is a I think a pretty powerful scene. It seems like one of the few moments where it's not CGI, that it's definitely some sort of real thing, and it really comes across there.
They used animatronics a lot in this movie. They did in the first two, which I think is a very effective. It gives the actors something of scale to work against, and I feel like you get much more of a sense of, like, when as even good actors, when they're up against a green screen creation, it sometimes doesn't have the same emotion as if they're working against something that they can get a sense of the scale of it or the malevolence of it. I mean, if I had to be around like one of those velociraptors, do you ever see one of those YouTube videos where they have these velociraptors costumes where it's a guy walking around inside it, but people still freak out. I mean, there is something in the back of our little mammalian brain that freaks out at the sight of these things, even when we know that they're tame.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, it's a scary thing. But I think that was a really beautiful moment in that scene where they're not vindictive, you know,
right.
And I think we could put humans in that same position and say that they would have been vindictive. They would have come back with a vengeance. And in fact, you see that they came with a group of mercenaries with the intent to kill as many dinosaurs as they could to find their son.
Right.
And that's very telling at the end of that movie, that all the raptors wanted was their egg back. That was it.
Right. Just like Paul and Amanda came to retrieve their lost child, the velociraptors were essentially doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. So there's that moment where I think that's what it is Amanda recognizes in that moment too, that this velociraptor, the female, because the female is the one that approached her, because the female doesn't have the quills. I think that's like I'm not sure if they made that point really strongly earlier, but that's really the female doesn't have the quills and the feathers, and the males did, and so that's the one that approaches her, and so she's like, okay, mother to mother, here's your children back,
right?
I got my kid, you got yours. We go our separate ways, and but that when the velociraptor leaves, it kind of gives them like that, you know, don't come back. Kind of look. I don't want to see you here ever again. And then we get that great scene where they run out onto the beach, and there's a guy in a suit, so incongruous. A guy in a suit with a megaphone. That's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. But then they come over the dune, and the First Marine Division is landing on the beach to save them. I'm wondering, did anybody face charges for any of this? Did anybody have to suffer any consequences?
Oh my gosh. There has to have been. Like the legal proceedings following something like this is just insane. It's got to be crazy.
Right. But in the end, Billy survived. The Kirbys were reunited, and not just reunited, they're getting back together again. Everything's okay. Well, except for the three mercenaries, but everybody else is good. I mean, it ends on a high note there at the end. And then we have the Pteranodon flying off into the sunset, literally. What do you think it was what was Joe Johnston trying to say with the end of that movie? Was it just, again, life finds a way, or was he? What do you think he was wanted to do with that idea? Any ideas? Any thoughts?
I feel like we see again and again in these movies, and many times in this one, just the glory of the dinosaurs, like that childlike wonder. Holy cow, there's dinosaurs here. And seeing those pteranodons fly away it's majestic. But all the while I'm thinking, that's not good. Are these
Where's
going
to go?
They're going to Costa Rica or whatever that's
there you go.
nearby, and that's not going to be good. And I don't know. I don't think in the new movies it's ever mentioned, but like dinosaurs.
Yeah, they don't address it, and that bothers me.
Yes.
Like there should have been a massive dinosaur outbreak thing that they had to deal with somewhere between the two, and it should have been mentioned. There should have been something there. So.
Yeah, it should have been like Jurassic World should have been like a World War Z sort of thing, where the world has been infested by dinosaurs, and it's like Planet of the Apes, where we're fighting for control of the planet. I don't know, maybe that's not a good idea, but that would have been an interesting movie with the Velociraptors versus humans, instead of apes versus humans. So that ended the franchise right there for a while, right? So 2001, this movie ends, and we don't get anything else until 2015 when Jurassic World came out. And it's not for a lack of trying, apparently. I mean, there were some efforts over the years to kind of people, should we look at another sequel? Should we keep the franchise going? But it was really not until Jurassic World. I'm trying to think when. Let's see that. Yeah, 2015. that someone said, hey, let's try it again. Let's, what would the story be? So that one was directed by Colin Trevorrow. We'll be talking about that soon in an upcoming episode, because we still got at least 2 more to go. We got, and then whatever they do for a third one if they do it. But so it's an interesting moment here when we kind of end the trilogy. Looking back, I mean, I know, Thomas, you said this was your favorite of the trilogy, but looking back, at the trilogy as a whole, how do you reflect on it, like with its place in movies and in the corpus of both Spielberg but also of Hollywood, where it sits?
I think I like this one because this was the age of trilogies, This was and it really was wrapping up that age of trilogy movies, because we don't really see major powerhouse trilogies after that point. And Spielberg was kind of moving on to other stuff. He seemed to be more interested in some more artistic projects and less in the blockbustery thing that he had been doing for so long. And really the scene of movies was changing a lot because there were a lot of kind of indie films coming out that were really making a name for themselves. And it's almost that moment where you get to the end of this where it's like, okay, this is goodbye big cinema. And now we're moving into more of a kind of democratic everybody kind of cinema. And then all of a sudden Marvel came in and just kind of smashed that idea.
And then we have cinematic universes instead of trilogies.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. So what do you get in this at the same time as this trilogy? You have the Lord of the Rings trilogy. You have the Jurassic trilogy. You have the
Matrix, right?
The Matrix trilogy. You have the Star Wars prequels. So you have all of these trilogy films. And then, you're going to get this period of time until Iron Man comes along where it's just sort of, you get blockbusters, you get big movies, but it's not about making, a franchise as we will again. I mean, what does Spielberg do? He does AI, he does Minority Report, Catch Me If You Can, which was a great movie, The Terminal, which was a smaller movie. I mean, he does a lot of these, small movies. He did War of the Worlds, which was a big movie, like a big blockbuster, but not, none of them had the same, until he gets to Schindler's List, which is, frankly stands alone and I think it's a passion project for him. But apart from that, I mean, it was singular things. But yeah, I think you're right. It was the end of an era in Hollywood filmmaking. Father Mike, what do you think about where this trilogy stands, even for you personally, in the corpus of things?
I think kind of like both of you said, back then 3 movies was the most you were going to get out of a franchise. It seemed like, well, you got the trilogy, that's the model set by Star Wars, that's where we will stay, and that Jurassic Park was the original was such at least personally for me, you could say it's an important film, personally, that it pulled me in and interested me in so many ways. And I feel like for any of its flaws, this movie captured a lot of the feeling of that in a way that the second one did not.
Yeah.
And just kind of continuing to explore the whole world, I think it was worthwhile for them to keep going. And I was surprised when Jurassic World showed up in 2015. I didn't think we'd be going back to any of this sort of thing. And it's also interesting with the trilogy, the original trilogy of this franchise. It's not Star Wars. It's not any of the Marvel movies. It's not really telling a story. It's kind of just like, there are dinosaurs out there. This is how humanity deals with it. And I think just the little thing of at the very beginning of this movie, that some guys had taken their boat and they're doing parasailing trips called Dinosaur around this island. Like, that's exactly what would happen. That is so realistic. And it's just that with this technology, if this existed, what we saw in these movies, I think, is pretty dead on, that people would exploit it in sinister ways, not so sinister ways, but we can't help ourselves but be interested in this.
If there's a through line for all of these movies, all 5 of them so far, I think it is precisely that, is in the face of, it's man versus nature is kind of it, man versus overwhelming the power of nature. But in the face of that, we still want to exploit. We still have these small human emotions of greed and vengeance, and we do these stupid things when it's against our best interest.
In defunct stick coins in defunct vending machines. That's us.
right, exactly. Or we are wandering into places that we ought not go, poking the bear. All these analogies. Yeah, I think that if there's anything that really kind of stakes through all of these, is that idea that especially corporations will sometimes do things to the point of self-harm and self-destruction, absent common sense. Common sense says you don't build a theme park with dinosaurs, like the deadliest predators in history. And then you don't make worse ones, like Indominus Rex. It's like, that's just common sense. And yet, given the opportunity, someone would do that. So yeah, that's a good point. All right, I think we should kind of wrap it up here. Before we finish, I'd just like to take a moment, as we often do in our shows, is I'd like to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Movies and TV shows. And we want to do that by name for some of you every time we talk. And those I want to mention by name today are Stan S., Thomas M., Ninth Hour Design, Alfredo B., and Joe T. It's through their generous donations and those of all of our patrons at sqpn.com/give. They make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Movies and TV shows and all the shows we do at sqpn.com. And you could join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So I think that's it from us. So what do you all think of Jurassic Park 3? What do you think of what we had to say about it? Do you think it was the best one of the bunch, or do you have a different opinion? We'd love to hear from you. Dispute it. Say no. It's not. Say
yes. It is.
We want to hear your opinion, whatever it is. So you can let us know by going to sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page and leaving a comment there on the show that you'll find there. Or you can send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. You can find our links on our show notes on sqpn.com. And like I said, be sure to subscribe to the show so that you get every episode as it comes out. Until next time, Father Michael Gossett, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of Jurassic Park 3.
Thank you.
And Thomas Enero, thank you as well.
Thank you, and I look forward to the next one.
That's right. Look forward to Jurassic World coming up, folks. And once again, I'm Don Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Movies and TV shows on StarQuest.